Hello and welcome. So today I want to talk about all the books I read in July. July was the best reading month that I've had all year in terms of how much I read. I didn't read the most books this month, but I did read my highest page count. But who's keeping track of that? Not me. I read 2,664 pages in July, which is the highest out of all 2025. And it's pretty high in general. Like that's a pretty big page count for a 31-day month. But let's just jump right in. I would like to talk about what I read this month. So the first book that I want to talk about is The Ink Black Heart by Robert Galbraith. So this is the sixth book in the Cormoran Strike series. This contributed to a lot of the page count. This is a 1,000-page book that I read this month. Now, I have read this book already, so this was a reread for me, but I'm finding that rereading this series, I'm finding a lot more enjoyment and getting a lot more out of it. It is pretty much just a basic mystery detective series. However, the two main characters, Robin, who's the head lead detective of the agency, hence a strike novel, hence it being a Cormoran Strike book, and he started this agency, and Robin is a business partner of his that started out in the first book as a temporary secretary, but come book 6 she is a full-on partner of him. She has as much authority as he does in the company and is solving the case right along with him. And this book, I feel like if you are reading this series and you've made it to book 6, I feel like you could say that about any series. If you make it to book 6, I imagine you are enjoying the series and are pretty involved, pretty into the series to make it to book 6, especially when you pick up book 6 and it's 1,000 pages. Without considering that, I could see how somebody wouldn't like this book. It's kind of mixed media. The case that they take on is somebody who created this online cartoon. It's like a YouTube cartoon. So the two people create this online cartoon that gets a very large fan base, a very passionate fan base, and one of the creators gets murdered, and Strike and Robin are hired to try and find out who this online anonymous person is who was harassing the woman that got killed. So they don't know that the anonymous person online is the killer, they don't know that it's the killer, but it's a safe bet that it's the killer, and it's not a surprise that it does turn out to be the killer. The twist isn't that the anonymous person online killed the creator of the game. The twist is obviously finding out who that anonymous person is. And clearly it's a lot. This is a big book. There's so much going on and there's so many characters, and I could see somebody being frustrated with just the sheer amount of things that are going on in this book, because there's the main mystery of trying to solve who committed the murder and who this person is, but then there's a bunch of other things going on the side. So the main thing these books got going on is the mystery, finding out who committed the crimes in all of the books. That is the main theme, right? This is a mystery detective series. However, what makes these books so special to me is Robin and Strike themselves. I think the character building of them is amazing and I love them, and there is obviously romantic tension between them, they are into each other, but there are things holding them back from that. The overarching plot of the two characters is she starts off as a temporary secretary. She's engaged to somebody else, and he is kind of a mess. Strike is an ex-war veteran who had his leg blown off in combat, and he's kind of a messy guy. He doesn't really take care of himself. But he's a very good guy and he's very just. That's why he's into solving mysteries. He likes to solve crime. He likes to bring justice. He's a good guy deep down, but he's just kind of messy on the surface. And so there's a lot to it, and that's a really vague description of both of the characters. But like I said, this is book 6, so there's all of these things that are playing into their relationship. And by book 6, Robin is single, no longer with the guy she was with at the beginning of the book. By this book, Strike has fully admitted to himself that he's in love with Robin, because a lot of the problem is that they don't even admit to themselves that they are in love with each other. And Strike, rightfully so, doesn't want to mess things up with Robin because Robin is honestly too good for him. And now they're business partners, so if something goes wrong in their relationship, it literally affects both of their careers that they've put so much time and investment into. And obviously he doesn't want to do that, and she doesn't want to do that. So we have the main mystery going on, and then all of the tension between them that's just been building up over 6 books. And it definitely is the slowest burn in the sense of like them getting together. So I could see somebody being annoyed with how slow their relationship is taking. And I could also see somebody annoyed with the actual mystery that's going on, because like I said, it's mixed media. And what I mean by that is because it's these creators of an online show and somebody who's stalking people online, a lot of this book is internet chat forums and reading tweets. So I can show you what a lot of this book is. So these are online chat forums, and it is a lot of this. It is a lot of this. Of these online usernames between these people that throughout the course of the book, you're figuring out who these people are and like what their significance is. But it's a lot of that. It's a lot of that. I do agree that I think it is a bit much. I think it is a tad overdone. I feel like this book didn't have to be 1,000 pages, but I read it all because I'm obsessed with these books. There was one chapter that was just literally just reading tweets. And it all like serves a purpose. I don't want to say it was completely unnecessary, but it is just a crazy amount of story building, right? Like you're in for a long ride when you get into this book because it's a lot of spider webbing. Like there's so much going on. There's so many characters connected, and we're figuring out, like it's one of those things where you would see like a cork board with a bunch of pictures and stuff, and there's like red string all over it. That is what this book is. And here are some of the tweets. It's a lot of that. And so I could understand being annoyed with the format of this book. With all of that said, I love this book. Okay? I think in terms of the whole series, it's probably my least favorite mystery because it's so modern, because it's a lot of tweet reading and chat reading, you know, talking about YouTube video, cartoons, and there's a lot of also political discussions in this book, but that's the gist of it. Hopefully that made sense. But as the series goes on, the relationship between Robin and Strike gets better and better and more intense. And so that's a better aspect of the book, is like the relationship building. So yeah, that was probably too long to talk about one book, but this book is so big. I don't know how I could summarize this to you in a reasonable span of time that wasn't super confusing and leaving out things that are essential to describe it, you know? So this was the first book I read this month. The next book I want to talk about that I read is Queen of Shadows, and this is the 5th book. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. The 5th book in the Throne of Glass series. I'm sure I've talked about the Throne of Glass, some of the earlier books, in previous reading videos, because I think I started this series with a 24-hour readathon. Fun fact. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about all of these books, but see, here are my notes in the back. So basically, in this book, the main character, Aileen, is previous book, she accepts her true identity, which is a queen. So she's a queen, but for a lot of her life, she's not lived as if she was a queen. A lot of people thought she died when she was younger, and the beginning of this series is finding out who she is, that she's a queen, that she has magic. In the first book, you don't know that she has magic. I don't think that's really a spoiler. So it's like finding out that she has magic, what her magic is, her figuring out how to use her magic because she's gone most of her life without using it, and accepting her true identity as a queen. In this book, she's kind of building her court. She's preparing to announce her presence, her arrival, the fact that she's alive, that she is a queen, and all of that. And if you've read any Sarah J. Maas, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that it's just very dramatic. And I get it. I know why it's dramatic. But if I were to describe Aileen, the main character, she is just Mrs. Perfect. She is so powerful, the most powerful, and she's beautiful and incredible, and everything just kind of works out. And I feel like a lot of that telling, overshowing, is a bit overdone. Her just pure amazingness is like, okay, thank you, we get it. And another issue I have with these books is the relationship building. So The Ink Black Heart, the book I just told you about, is, like I said, the slowest possible build of a relationship. And while some people might find that annoying, I love it because I care so much more about Robin and Strike, because we've had so many books, so many pages of character building, of finding out who they are and why they are the way that they are. And it's like actually over a span of time, actually 6-7 books. Their relationship is actually spanning over these books over a 6-year period. And so there's so much character building and relationship building. And I appreciate that. It makes me so much more invested and it makes me care so much more. These books, I kid you not, the first 4 books, she's with a different man. She's with a different dude. And every time it's like the most passionate relationship. It's like, oh, I've been searching my whole life for you. We were made for each other. I would die for you. But that's happened 4 times with 4 different guys. As much as it's entertaining to read, I'm just a lot less attached and invested in the characters themselves. So why am I reading all of them? Why am I 5 books in? I don't know, okay? Because 2 things can be true at once. Because I could have problems with the character building and the plot development, but still be having a good time, okay? That's why. Listen, I'm beating myself up over the fact that I'm reading these books. I really am, to be honest with you. And on top of that, the guy she's with now, so the previous book and this book, she has made this blood oath with a character named Rowan. And again, it's a lot of, he's incredible. He's the most powerful Fae warrior she's ever seen or ever was. They can like read each other's minds, and their bond is stronger than anything I've seen before, because not only are they blood bonded to each other, but their powers are like puzzle pieces. Like her power and his power fit together so they can like combine their powers, and it just makes it all very, very dramatic, and everything's just a little bit too convenient, I think, is how I would describe it. And then a main part of this book is her and Rowan and these other characters returning to this kingdom that she was previously serving in to save the king's son, because the king in that land evil, and he's enslaved his son. He's got this like collar on, so he's a zombie, and the king can do whatever he wants with him, and the king has outlawed magic throughout their land. However, the king's son has magic, and so now he's using the collar to, I don't know, take over the world, I guess. So Aileen and Rowan and some other characters are returning to that kingdom to try and kill the king and free Dorian, king's son. And Dorian is the first relationship that Aileen had. And so you know how I said Aileen's the most powerful woman on the planet, and then Rowan is the most powerful Fae warrior? Well, turns out Dorian not only has magic, but he is also the most incredible, powerful man also. We don't know what he is. Rowan's Fae and Aileen is half Fae somehow. Still don't know how that works. I don't know why he has magic, but whatever it is, it's like incredibly powerful. So there's that. That's a lot of issues I have with the character development and with the plot development. But with all that said, I did enjoy this book. I did have a good time. I have previously described these types of books as junk food reading, and I stick by that. It is fun, good time, but not the best, you know? So the book ended with her returning to her homeland that she hasn't been to in a long time. She's been running from her previous life and took on this new life, but now she's returning home to be queen of that land, queen of Shadow, you know? So the next 2 books that I want to talk about, I'm probably not going to say too much about them because they're a bit different than I normally talk about on this channel. So I read a lot of fiction. That's majority of what I read. Very rarely have I mentioned mentioned nonfiction that I read. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but I do read nonfiction. And so the next two books I want to talk about are two nonfiction books that I read this month. And I probably won't get into it too much just because honestly they're kind of personal in a way. Not in a way, they are definitely kind of personal. But so the first book that I want to talk about is Breaking Free from Body Shame. So this book I read as a part of a book club. So I read it with a few other women friends that I have. And so this is basically about what it says it's about. We decided we wanted to read something on body shame and breaking free from it. Yep. And we really enjoyed this book. I think a lot of us felt the same way. We got things from it. It generated good discussion. However, there was nothing really revolutionary or earth-shattering in this book. But basically, it's about learning to overcome guilt and shame that we have as women about our bodies just almost inherently, and shame and negative thoughts and feelings that we've kind of assumed or that have built up over our lives because of people around us, the media we consume, or what culture says and thinks and does. So it's about breaking free from that and learning to love our bodies, not based on anything like the size you are, the weight you are, what culture says is beautiful. It's like learning to love your body because God made it and therefore it is good because we are made in his image. So that's what this book is about. Like I said, some good discussion came from it, but definitely not the most impactful book that I've read. And then the last book that I read this month, I'm not gonna probably talk about it too much for obvious reasons, but I needed to include it because, well, I finished reading it this month. Actually, my husband and I have been reading this together over the past several months, and we just finished it this month. And I want to talk about it because unlike that book, I really liked this book, and we both got so much out of this book. And I know I'm dancing around the title. There it is. Married Sex, that's what it's called. And we were gifted this when we got married, which was almost 3 years ago. So we just now got around to reading it, and I think I would recommend this book to any married couple at any age or stage in their marriage. I really would. It has really helped us a lot. I feel like I don't really need to get into what exactly it's about. It's about what it says it's about. And it's written by Gary Thomas and Deborah Valletta. He's a pastor and she is a counselor. He writes one chapter and she writes the next chapter, and they both sometimes give commentary on the other person's chapter. And it's just a pretty in-depth conversation and look at sex in a Christian marriage. And I think it is so important. Like I said, this is kind of personal and not something I usually talk about on this channel. Not something I usually talk about, period. But like, I think it's something that's so important that doesn't get talked a lot about in the church. Just relationships, intimate relationships at all. And I think it is so important. And it's a journey that I think every married couple goes on for the rest of their life. And I feel like this book was so helpful. While I might not agree with everything that this book said, it did so much for Mike and I's marriage, and it just generated a lot of conversations that were so important that we wouldn't have had on our own or organically. Without getting into too much detail, because we don't need to do that, this book, it was great for us. And like I said, we read it together, and I would recommend you reading it with your spouse. So yeah, kind of weird, seemingly random for you, probably not really random for me, but finished this book this month and had to mention it because it's true. I read this book and I got a lot out of it. So, yes. Now I want to talk about my TBR for the rest of the year. So it's August now, and I don't have a lot of books on my TBR. I mean, they're huge books. There's only 4 books in my hand right now. So I'm actually already reading this book, another nonfiction. Look at me reading a lot of nonfiction this year. I'm actually probably over halfway through this book. So this is just a commentary on 1st and 2nd Peter. Fascinating, I know. It really is though. So I actually finished my second read through of the entire Bible this month. And so now I'm kind of diving deeper into individual books of the Bible. And I imagine I'm going to be reading other commentaries in that collection as well, but this is what I'm reading currently. And then books on my TBR that I will be reading the end of this year. this isn't all of them. I'm definitely going to be reading more than 3 books come the end of this year, but this is the only physical books that I have on my TBR shelf. The only ones that I have planned. That's not true. Definitely on my TBR is this book. This is the 8th book in the Cormoran Strike series. So like I read the 6th book this month. The 8th book is coming out in September. So I'm very excited for that. And so that's on my TBR. I will be reading that when it comes out, but I don't have it yet because it's not released yet, unfortunately. And then another book on my TBR is The Complete Sherlock Holmes Volume 1. So exactly what it says it is. Sherlock Holmes, it's a collection of Sherlock Holmes's books. So I'm not familiar, I mean, I know who Sherlock Holmes is, but to be honest with you, when I think of Sherlock Holmes, I think of The Great Mouse Detective, which is not the same thing, but that's what I think of. I love reading classics. If you've watched my other reading vlogs, those are like normal books that we talk about. Usually it's classics and fiction, none of this cringy nonfiction that I've been reading recently. So I figured I need to read Sherlock Holmes. So this is on my TBR. Another book on my TBR is yet another classic, Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. Vividly interweaving epic historical drama with personal tragedy, Dickens's gripping novel depicts the lives of two very different men as they become enmeshed through their love for Lucy Manette, and they are drawn against their will to the vengeful, blood-stained streets of Paris at the height of the Reign of Terror. So that's what this is about. And then the last book on my TBR is It. Can you count this as a classic? I feel like you can, because Stephen King is, everyone knows who Stephen King is. I like horror, I like thrillers. I haven't actually read a lot of Stephen King though, so I feel like I kind of have to read this. And I've actually heard people say that it's really good, so I do know vaguely what it's about. I know it's about this clown that haunts the sewers, and these kids, when they were kids, they were haunted by this clown. And then I believe the story is maybe jumping back and forth between when they were kids being haunted by the clown and now they're adults and they're coming back to their hometown, and this whole thing with the clown is still going on. That was probably not very accurate, but let me read what the back says. It was the children who saw and felt what made Derry so horribly different. In the storm drains, in the sewers, it lurked, taking on the shape of every nightmare, each person's deepest dread. The adults knew nothing, time passed, and the children grew up, moved away, but the horror was deep and buried, until the grown-up children were called back once more to confront it. That's what this book is about. You probably knew that, but I'm planning on reading this by the end of this year, hopefully come fall. Yeah, that is gonna do it for this video. Just a quick update on what I read this month. I'm having a pretty good reading year, which, what does that even mean? I don't know. I am reading and I am enjoying it still, so that's good. I've read 24 books this year so far out of my goal of 35, so we're doing good. You might be like, dang, you're already almost done and it's only August, but you gotta leave room for buffer, okay? I might be on a reading streak, but it's very likely that I will go a long span of time without reading anything because that's just what happens and that's okay. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about any of the books that I read this month. If you have any thoughts on what I did read, I'd love to talk about it. And if you have any thoughts on what I'm planning on reading, I would also love to hear about it down in the comments. Feel free to check out my channel for any other reading content that I do here. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in my next video, and